Good morning. This is Jim Whitehead of All Power Group. And yeah, Phoenix Animal, but today I'm functioning more in the All Power Group. Please excuse me, I am growing a beard. It's not that I forgot to shave today. Anyway, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Please leave comments. It helps me feel better that somebody is here. All right. As part of my channel, yes, it's mainly wonderful animals. And although there's sad things within animal issues, there's a lot of happy things. And I'm generally one that wants to talk about happy things. But in the world, at 75, yes, there's been times where you'd say, this is not a happy time, or this is a great, happy time. So we work toward trying to be in a happy time. But this politics in the middle is a generalized discussion about the current state of our political process. And I'm being kind when I say it that way. And again, as I've said, I've been here 75 years. Thank goodness. And I hope I'm going to be here for another 75 years. Well, not quite, but at least 10 would be okay. But what we're in the middle of is one of the most illogical times in our history. And what I do with this politics in the middle, because again, I try to be balanced and discuss things that don't make any sense, that are very illogical, a little funny sometimes, but hopefully it gets the point across of what situations we're in. Now, starting it off here, the first one is imposing broad international tariffs. And you know, it's like with anything. When I was 21 years old, I thought I knew everything, and that I could have it where, because I knew everything then, I would just keep getting more knowing and knowing and knowing. Believe it or not, it doesn't work that way. Trump has discussed many times through his life about the unfairness of other countries and tariffs and unbalanced trade. And we recognize when you come in, and if I had become president, I would say, what's wrong with the system? Let's work equitably with our partners around the world and make it better for everybody. Because that's, and you've heard this theme before, that is considered, win-win situations. Trump doesn't get win-win. He gets Trump wins, everybody else loses. Can't talk him out of it, because that is not the way things work. And he's older than I am, so he should know better. Now, the corruption and the point of where he got so imbalanced is he always did everything he wanted, whether it made sense or not. He had a lot of money, so it wasn't where people would go, if you don't do this or do that, you're not going to have money. Well, no, he got money from his father, and he basically, in essence, became a crime family. Taking, it's old Robin Hood, but the opposite. It was Trump taking everything for himself and leaving nothing for anybody else. So in this, the reality of showing what you have here, with these widespread tariffs on goods from numerous countries, including allies, friends. Canada is the prime example of a wonderful country next to us, and very supportive of U.S. and we were very supportive of them. And let's face it, when you share a boundary, and of course we do with, with Canada and of course with Mexico. And he was trying, in the sense of trying to get where he was going to bring in, and this is illogical, but this is not one of the four that I'm talking about. But he wants Canada to become a 51st state because he keeps saying, which doesn't make any sense, the line that was drawn between that which separates the U.S. and Canada was just like somebody did a straight line. Well, that's how boundaries work. They start from one point, they go to another point, and that's the boundary. And admittedly, when you look at the states, sometimes when they, let's say Louisiana, Oklahoma, in some cases, when they were working boundaries many, many, many years ago, in some cases they would use a river as one of the boundaries between one state and the other state. But if there wasn't one, they kind of had to do a line. I don't know any other way to say it. That's it. I know. I'm amazed every day how stupid, illogical, childish. I can go on and on and on. But critics have described this policy as illogical, there's that word, and economically self-harming. Arguments against the tariffs pointed out that they were based on flawed assumptions about trade deficits, reducing national wealth, risked harming U.S. consumers and businesses through higher prices and retaliatory tariffs, and damaged relationships with key trading partners without a clear, logical economic benefit. Some European leaders explicitly called the tariffs illogical. So there's the first one, and unfortunately how it works out is we're all being hung. Besides my channel, I was a generator business for 20 years, couldn't work outside anymore in the heat that we have in Florida, and especially in the summer. So I'm here doing different things. Try to get a little revenue here, a little revenue there. So bottom line, one of my choices, because I have a pretty good following on eBay. I've been on eBay since 2002, and I was just going to, yes, I sell things that I have here that I don't need, but that's not, brings in a little extra dollars here and there. But what I was going to start doing, and I someday I'll do a presentation on all the things when we moved over here from Davie, Florida in 2023. Everything has kind of gone screwy, where I'm planning this, and then something causes it to be not a good idea anymore. Drop shipping. As you know, with drop shipping is you find a product that's a relatively low price that you can buy it for. Because I always look, again, win-win. I buy it at a relatively lower price than you would buy it. I then put it up on my eBay store, and hopefully if you buy it, I make a few dollars. Nothing you get rich quick. And where you would have to say, where are you going to get products you can get it at, let's say, a wholesale price, a cheaper price? Well, China was one of the prime locations in the world of where, because of their cost of living there and their general pay that they get for producing goods, had it where I could sell their stuff, they would make money, I would make a little money, and the customer buying it would say, I get a good deal on it. That's what I look at as being the primary emphasis and goal. Real simple, even though it's not. But so when all these tariffs and, tariffs were built on bad numbers and numbers that shouldn't have been included in the first place. But China, and then because Trump didn't get his way, because he acts like a 4-year-old, he then kept piling more tariffs on China. And then, of course, China didn't go, oh, no, which anybody knowing China would probably recognize or would surmise that, no, China's not going to go, oh, okay, we're sorry, we'll do anything you want. No, they're the last country in the world that would do that. Okay, moving on. Altering the hurricane. I don't know if you remember that. This goes back a while. And these are things where you go, no, this doesn't make any sense. But anyway, Dorian, the Hurricane Dorian, which we go, the scandal is called Shoppy Gate, after incorrectly stating that Hurricane Dorian posed a threat to Alabama, Trump later displayed an official weather map in the Oval Office that appeared to have that had been altered with a marker, really Shoppy, to include Alabama in the storm's potential path. And I have a lot of respect for the Hurricane Center, and I felt bad because they're like, what is this guy doing? Alabama right now is not in the cone, I guess you might say. But Trump, because he said it, he doubles down. And that's the interesting thing. In Trump's first term, we were thinking that he might figure it out and recognize the best way to be a good president. And we'd see one day where he might say something, do something, and we'd go, wow, this is my wife and I. I mean, we were so sad that Hillary Clinton didn't get elected, and we can all debate that all day. But the point is, you have to take what is given to you. So we're saying, well, today he seems like he's starting to get the whole process, the actions necessary, things to do a good job. Most of you and I would say, I want to do a good job, and I'm going to do it honest and ethically. But not Trump. What we found is, instead of he's being more, acting as a president. And again, I'm talking about the first term. And the next day, he would be double bad. And we'd say, we can honestly see that this man does not have the capacity of doing things that make sense for him, for his reputation, and for our country. And of course, we were ecstatic when he did not get elected in 2020. And when they get into saying, and he says it was stolen, and generally we know that it wasn't stolen. Yeah, there's always fraud, there's always a little bit of this, but nothing where you'd be saying there was so much fraud that that's why Biden became president. And still to this day, he is still saying that the 2020 election was stolen. Now, this is a little side point, and I keep seeing it here and there. Anonymous is very good. You know, they're hackers, but they're very good at finding information that's very hard to find. And they've been talking more than once. And I'm not saying this is a total reality or a truism, but I think he didn't win the 2024 election. I really don't. You know, when Musk came in with all his money and how they did some irregular, have it where some folks could not vote or would not be allowed to vote, or they threw votes out. Honestly, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I recognize that it doesn't add up that when he only had a population or maybe 42% of the population were in his group cult, that isn't enough to win an election. So something is wrong here. Anyway, back to the hurricane. This action was widely seen as illogical because it contradicted official forecasts from the National Weather Service and appeared to be an attempt to retroactively justify his earlier inaccurate statement rather than acknowledging the error. Wow, that is sad because, you know, how many people, except maybe the 42% at the time, would say when there's a self-drawn loop on the map saying, well, see, I said it was Alabama was potentially going to be in trouble, and see, here we go. See, I'm showing you how it was. You're saying, really? Does that make any sense? No, nothing makes sense. Anyway, okay. The next thing. Now, you know I'm enjoying this, but down deep, or not even down deep, I worry every day that we are going to go beyond a point of no return. And we're better than that. We just are. Okay, the other thing that happened, which is again illogical, and some of these things I didn't even hear or didn't know, so this is good for me and hopefully good for you. Applying high tariffs to the, it's called the AGOA beneficiaries. It's a African policy, and Trump imposed particularly high reciprocal tariffs on African nations like Lesotho, Madagascar, and South Africa. Critics pointed out the perverse logic and illogical nature of this, as these countries were hit hardest precisely because they had trade surpluses with the U.S. I swear I don't drink. I know it's not, you say, oh, poor Jim, he's drunk today. But no, I'm not. Anyway, I don't drink. Drink water. Anyway, these were mainly trade surpluses with the U.S., largely achieved through exporting goods duty-free under the U.S.'s own African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, punishing countries for successfully utilizing a trade preference program was seen as contradictory and illogical. You know, I signed a deal with you and then I punish you. And even though the deal will have it where I win and you win, but I still am going to make it bad. Who put tariffs on? And that's why this was shown as such a uninformed, illogical, bad choices. And again, At least we know now Trump doubles down and triples down. I'm so glad I don't have a mind like that, because it would be sad. Because not only do you have to, when you are in a weird way of acting, you have to deal with people going, Jim, you're an asshole. Excuse my language. And instead of saying, oh yeah, I guess I was, let me logically do something different, I would instead say, blank you, blank you, blank you, blank you, and I'm going to do a double, and I'm going to do a triple. And you'd be saying, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's why he's not been able to, in reality, he's had quite a few bankruptcies. And knowing the way he is, these are probably bankruptcies that you didn't really have to have, but he just doesn't do anything that makes any sense for both himself and for those he's working with. Okay, the next, and this is funny, and I know most of you already know this, but imposing tariffs on uninhabited Arctic islands. As part of a broad application of new trade tariffs, the Trump administration imposed a 10% tariff on goods from Australia. I love Australia, by the way. I love Rode, and there's other wonderful companies in Australia. Although I did get scammed by a company called ZipZype in Australia. But other than that, Australia is good. So he put this 10% tariff, which explicitly included remote, no common sense here, uninhabited islands. And the islands are Heard Island and McDonald's Islands near Antarctica. These volcanic islands have no human population, being home primarily to penguins and glaciers. I guess what he's trying to do is, as you know, a glacier advances from point A and it keeps going to point C, B, C, D, so on and so forth. So I guess he's just saying, you have no right as a glacier to move on the land that technically isn't yours. So that's, yeah. Anyway, so with, there was essentially no trade there. The Australian Prime Minister explicitly criticized the move as illogical, highlighting the absurdity of applying trade measures to a location with no inhabitants or commerce, viewing it as contrary to the partnership between the two nations. So, makes all the sense in the world. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed those. The logic and the fun here is that every day, every night, I pray that we get out of this problem, because and I'm 75. I've seen so much in 75 years, good, bad, indifferent, but I've never been this afraid, not as much for myself, just for everybody. And this has been about 3 weeks of turmoil. Only 3 weeks. What happens when we get to 6 weeks and 9 weeks? It isn't going to, unless we can get rid of Trump, we are never going to have a country like we have had, that we could have. And when there are things wrong, and I've been in my own businesses, and things would come up that were wrong or incorrect. I'd fix them. No big deal. And I would be honest. You know, with generators, I had to have, when I installed standby generators for 20 years, it's permitted beyond reason of everything, you know, whether you look right, look left, you have to have a permit. But bottom line is, and I would say these to customers, and this is the last point I'll make. I'd say to customers, first of all, you'll see me a lot here because I was the one that met all the inspectors. And if you don't meet inspectors, they'll come and they'll go, I didn't find the paperwork, and they fail you, and then you have to come, they have to come back. And sometimes they charge you, you know, a fee for coming back. So I would meet all the inspectors. And I would say to my generator customer, I promise you, one, I will not tell you something I know is wrong, and I will not do anything that I'm hoping an inspector would miss. I mean, if you're standing there and the inspector drives up and he gets out and you're standing in front of what you don't want him to see, you're probably going to get caught, and you're going to have to fix it. You're going to have to pay for a reinspection. And I did some of these inspections, I did a lot of them through COVID. I'd be there with a mask, and I'd meet the inspectors. And sometimes they were good, sometimes they were not. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Politics in the Middle. And please subscribe. I really, really appreciate all that you do for me. And stay well and try to think positive, even though I admit every day it's so hard to be positive. I get it. But we're blessed. And I always pray every night to all the animals, my family, Jamie, my wonderful Shih Tzu, who you've seen if you've watched my channel. And, you know, it's just how wonderful our country is. And I'm just so afraid that if we all don't work together, it's going to be a bad ending to this. The scary part, I mentioned about being honest. I can say this without any hesitation that in general, the Republican Party and anybody in the Trump administration, they don't tell the truth. They lie. I mean, it's amazing because it's blatantly anybody with half a brain that can read would know they're lying. This poor gentleman that's in Ecuador, the administration says, oh, he's a bad he was this and this, MS-13, terrible, terrible, terrible. But they've shown no actual proof of any of those charges. And they know the judge in Maryland back in 2021, I think, but don't quote me on that date, said this, this of course, Biden was president, thank goodness. But the judge said, you are never allowed to send, if something happens and he does something he shouldn't do, you are not allowed to send him to Ecuador because he might get killed. So what do? They send him to Ecuador and still have not shown any proof of all the awful things they say he did. And I always say, if you are trying to, how would you say, discuss something with somebody that doesn't tell the truth, there's no point in even having that discussion. And I don't even mean an argument, but it's just a point, counterpoint discussion without either the point or the counterpoint being all lies. And that's what we're in. We're in a very bad situation where, you know, up is down and down is up. So hopefully with us all working together, we will do okay. And thank you very much for being here today. And please be well and be safe.